All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's NCARB Live. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the changes coming up for the ARE that we announced last week. Joining us today is our Manager of Examination Maintenance and Security, Terrence Gutberlet, and Assistant Vice President of Customer Relations, Cassandra Walker. Terrence and Cassandra are going to walk you through various upcoming changes to the exam and our ARE guidelines, and then we'll have a live Q&A where we'll answer questions that you have. Before we get started, Terrence and Cassandra, why don't you tell our attendees about yourselves and your role at NCARB? Terrence, we'll start with you.
So Jenny, happy to be here today. My name is Terrence Gutberlet. Like you said, I'm a manager of examination here at NCARB, and a manager of examination maintenance. So in my role, I work with NCARB psychometricians who are testing experts and the many architect volunteers who work with NCARB to make those updates to the ARE. The actual work of making the updates to things like ICC code, making sure the ARE uses the current ICC code. I help facilitate updates to that, all the way to retirement of entire exam item types. So that's why I'm here today. We're going to talk about some of those updates, very similar to that type of thing I just mentioned, and happy to be here. Cassandra.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cassandra Walker. I'm one of the assistant vice presidents of our customer relations group. And my team in the customer relations group works very closely with our licensure candidates and our registered architects on the path or journey to become a licensed architect. One of the biggest reasons I'm here today is there are some changes to the ARE that as frontline employees, we've heard directly from our customers. So I'm happy to share that information and pleased to be here.
All right, thank you both so much. So as I said, Terrence and Cassandra have a short presentation for us that's going to walk through an overview of some of those changes, and then we'll get into your specific Q&A. So feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A tool at any point, and we'll get to as many as we can during today's webinar. With that, I'm going to share screen.
Okay, so in today's webinar, we have a few ARE updates that you need to be aware of. And these will all be effective April 28th. The biggest one will be the automatic provisional feedback, retirement of drag and drop or drag and place items on the divisions, updates to exam accommodation instructions, which is very important for our ABA and ESL candidates. And then, of course, ARE 5.0 guidelines. There's some reference material that has been updated in the guidelines that you need to be aware of. So automatic provisional feedback. You're probably asking yourself, why are we changing this? So one of the things that my team works very closely with, they're frontline employees, and we get tons of feedback from our customers where they were missing the provisional feedback screen. So they would go through their exam, they're super excited, they feel they've done well, and they're like, hey, where's my provisional score? So one of the things we've done is to increase the visibility of that feedback screen. And so it will no longer be necessary to indicate that you want to use it. It'll automatically pop up for you. And it's been redesigned to increase the visibility of your results. It won't be a very small screen anymore. So here's an example of that feedback screen. Again, I want to ensure everyone that the feedback is still provisional, but the pass or fail will be very prominent and apparent to you. You'll no longer have to go searching for it, and it'll be impossible for you to miss it because it'll automatically be shown to you. All right, over to Terrence.
And so the other pretty big change of this batch of changes that we're talking about is the retirement of drag and place items. So beginning April 28th, the ARE will no longer use drag and place items. The reason for this has to do with our mission, we endeavor to align ourselves and the ARE with testing industry best practices or evolving best practices. So in the testing world, research and discussion, conversation, findings pointed to the fact that drag and place items may be better off not being used in lieu of other item types that assess your qualifications, your competencies more efficiently and effectively. So what you don't need to worry about, though, is the rest of the ARE. The rest of the ARE is going to stay the same. And in fact, the retirement of drag and place items, we believe, will strengthen the ARE's ability to allow you to showcase your qualifications. Multiple choice, check all that apply, hotspot items. Those three item types will be sticking around with the ARE. Same with the format of those item types and how they're scored. Case studies, you're going to continue to see those too. You're going to see the same tools and resources being used on the ARE. You're also, you might wonder, like, okay, well, let's say I took an exam and passed it, and that had drag and place items on it. What happens to that exam? Nothing. Actually, nothing at all. The retirement of drag and place items will not impact any of your prior scores. The retirement will only have an impact on the ARE until until April 28th. That's the start where you'll see this change. So you can continue preparing the way you had been. So yeah, an important thing to note on that subject of preparation is that the ARE practice exams will continue to have drag and place items on those exams until April 28th. So if you have an exam before then, you can continue to prepare in that manner. Starting April 28th, though, drag and place items, in order to reflect this change to the ARE, will be also retired from the practice exams. Practice exams, like the live exam, will again only feature the other three remaining item types.
All right, so back to me, and this is with the accommodations portion of our updates. So we offer two types of exam accommodations. It's American with Disabilities Act, or ADA, and then English as a Second Language, or ESL. And the section on requesting exam accommodations in the guidelines have been updated to make sure that the language is clear, that requests must be approved before you can schedule an exam appointment. We can't retroactively apply any accommodations to already scheduled exams. And you're probably asking yourself, Cassandra, should be something easy that you can do. And yes, while it may appear easy, what's happening in the background is once you apply and you are scheduled for an appointment at a test center, that seat is locked in with that test center, and we cannot update it unless you're looking to reschedule or cancel your exam. But we can't add anything to an already scheduled seat in the test center. Also, what we've learned is most times when people need accommodation, it could be a length of time for the exam. You need additional break time, or you need an extended test time. And those seats get longer. So the seat can go from 4 hours to 6 hours, depending on how long you need, how long your accommodation is approved for. So again, we can't apply any accommodations to an already scheduled exam. There are ways, if you want to do that, if you've already scheduled something and you realize, hey, I actually, I could apply for accommodations. You have options there. You can either sit for the exam without your approved accommodations, or you will have to cancel the accommodation and reschedule it once your accommodation has been applied. But our customer relations group is there to support you, and we recommend that you contact us if you have any issues with your accommodation process.
And there are a couple of other updates you'll find in the ARE guide 5.0 guidelines. The changes we mentioned before will be reflected in the guidelines, but so will a couple changes to the reference guide, the list of recommended study materials provided in the back of the ARE guidelines. So the first of these changes is that the AIA Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct is recommended as a study resource. It's even used on the exam in some of our case study items. There is a new version, however, a 2024 version of the Code of Ethics, and the exam has been updated to reflect that change. The AIA Code of Ethics, for instance, that you might find in some of these case study items, is now the 2024 rather than the 2020. The second of these changes to the reference guide is that there will be listed four more AIA contract documents in the list of recommended study resources. We're adding these AIA contract documents because they better reflect, or they will reflect, the type of content being assessed on the ARE, on the use of various different contract documents.
Okay. Thank you, Terrence and Cassandra. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start our Q&A session. So remember, you can put your Q&A in the chat at any point, and we'll go ahead and start with some of the questions that we have. And if for any reason you need to leave today's recording or today's webinar before it's over, just know that a recording will be available on our YouTube channel after the fact. All right, so first question, and Terrence, I'll throw this one to you. What is the accuracy of provisional feedback? How often is the pass-fail that a candidate sees in the test center not aligned with their official score report?
Yeah, well, so I can't answer that question definitively. A large part of the feedback you see needs to be, well, a major factor in the feedback you see is that your state licensing board or your jurisdictional licensing board signs off on those results. So I can say in general terms rather than definitive terms, then in general terms, the provisional feedback you see is pretty close to the actual score or result you'll find in your official score reports.
I think we typically tell people that it's fully accurate, just not fully validated, right? So the pass-fail is not going to change, but we are going to look for any abnormalities in your testing experience. Do you think that's accurate?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, your scores are accurate. It's a matter of getting them through the system, so to speak. So yeah, thank you.
All right. So when, I know you talked about this a little bit in the presentation, but when will the practice exams be updated to reflect the removal of drag-in place items?
Same day as the live exam updates, April 28th. They will be updated in tandem. So ready for you to prepare and proceed on your program of study.
All right. Can NCARB provide more detailed feedback on failed exams than is currently provided in our score reports?
Yeah, well, so NCARB is always looking to improve or enhance the candidate experience in testing, and always looking to give them candidates as much information as we can to help inform their your test preparation. So the question of there are multiple ways of providing feedback, but we recently settled on an updated one, and that gives you a little bit more information than in the past. And know that we will continue looking to provide candidates with increased information like that. within the bounds of how appropriate or it would be to do so at that time, and perhaps other constraints. But we're again, we have our pulse on what can be done. Absolutely.
Great. Next question. If you've already purchased an exam seat, but haven't scheduled a test at a specific test center yet, are you able to apply for exam accommodations and then use that prepaid seat to schedule? Or do you have to have the accommodations in place before you even purchase the exam seat? Cassandra, I think that's a good question for you.
Yes, that's a great question. And yes, you can prepay for exam credits or seat credits, and they will sit on your record for 1 year. That's the expiration date before you have to schedule them. So as long as the seat credits there unscheduled, we can apply an accommodation to your record.
Great, thank you. We talked a little bit about the process of accommodation scheduling, but I think a lot of candidates maybe aren't aware of the accommodations that NCARB has. Do you think you could provide some examples of some of our most common accommodations?
Of course. So for Americans with Disability Act or ADA, our most common would be separate room. So you need to test in a space that is free of distractions. Another most common is extended test time. So based on maybe an underlying condition of either ADHD, dyslexia, where it takes you longer to process information, you would need extended test time. Or you may have a physical disability that you need extra breaks because you may have to go to the bathroom more than you usually would. So those are three most common accommodations. However, every accommodation is assessed based on the individual. So if there's something, if you've ever had accommodations in the past because you were going to high school or college and you had testing accommodations, you should probably come and talk to us because you more than likely will need that going into your professional career as well. So while those are the most popular, it runs the gamut. It could run all the way up to you need a footstool to prop up your leg, or you need a reader, someone who's actually reading questions to you in a separate room. Oh, and I'm sorry, for ESL, you have two accommodations there. It's 20% extra test time because we found our studies in our surveys, working very closely with the exams team, found that people who are English as a second language, it takes them longer to translate what's going on in their head to actually to complete their exam. So as a result of that, they have extra extended test time. And then they also have the option of bringing in a word for word translation dictionary. It cannot have definitions, but it can be a word for word. And the word for word translation dictionary is only available if you go into a test center to test. You cannot test at home with a book. For security purposes, as I'm sure you understand.
Thank you. All right, Terrence, a question for you. With the removal of drag and place items, should candidates expect to see more multiple choice and check all that apply?
Yes, absolutely. The ARE will have the same number of items per division. And so, that does pose a problem, right? If you want to retire a whole item type, well, are you going to have less items? And the answer is no. The item number of items on each division will remain the same. And instead of having, let's say, 20% of the exam being drag and place items, that percentage will gets added to the counts of the other item types. So yes, the answer there is you will see more of the multiple choice check all that apply and hotspot item types as a replacement for those. Remember, a more efficient replacement for those drag and place items.
All right. And as a follow-up, with more check all that apply questions on the exam, will NCARB consider giving partial credit for check all that apply items?
Yeah, no, again, we follow the trends in the testing industry and evolving best practices. We follow the research. The check all the apply item is, as you know, you have to click two correct responses or four correct responses in order to get full credit for that item type. It's a valid assessment tool, and we find that it is efficient in gathering and kind of revealing the qualification or competency levels of candidates who take the exam. However, should that change, should that no longer be an efficient item type, you can bet we will sure be looking at that and having conversations about its use.
Okay. Cassandra, a question for you. So if a candidate has an exam appointment scheduled, but they have learned about the ESL accommodation and they'd like to apply for it, should they cancel their existing appointment while they apply for the ESL accommodation?
Yes, we would recommend if they are really adamant that they want to use that accommodation for a scheduled exam, it would behoove them to cancel it, wait for the approval, and then reschedule it based on that. Now that accommodation is attached to the record.
Okay, great. And how does a candidate demonstrate that they are an English as a second language speaker?
That's a great question. We have a number of ways that you can demonstrate that. We take foreign transcripts, foreign birth certificates, green cards, any type of foreign passport. If you have a citizen, like a green card or any type of documentation that you're now a naturalized citizen, we can take that as well. You also have the opportunity for attestation. So if you have a member of a clergy, an employer who can attest that you are English as a second language, we'll accept that as well. But what we do recommend is if you don't see that list, if you don't see what you have, your documentation on the list when you apply, that's okay. Just contact customer relations and we'll be more than happy to walk you through that process.
Thank you. Okay, Terrence, another question for you. So I think some candidates have noticed the trend with last year's retirement of the quantitative fill in the blank questions and this year's retirement of drag and place questions. Are we anticipating removing any other item types in the future?
We are not anticipating that. However, I think we are open to whatever improves the assessment experiences and allows us to get good data on where you are in your path to becoming a practicing architect. So stay tuned, I would say. Nothing in the works.
Great, thank you. So another question about just the timing for official feedback. So candidates will now see provisional feedback, and by now, I mean on April 28th and going forward, they'll see provisional feedback automatically. They don't have to check that they want to see it. But if they miss that provisional feedback or they leave the test center and they worry they imagined it, how long do they have to wait to see their official score report? I'll toss that one to Cassandra.
All right, so it is still officially 7 to 10 business days for official score report. So they would have to wait until then. And just stay connected with your record because you'll receive an email message when that score report is available to you.
All right. So, Terrence, for candidates who have an exam on April 29th, is there any way that they can get access to updated practice exams to study earlier, or how should they best prepare for the exam with these changes?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say the practice exams as they are now, if you were to use those in your preparation for an April 29th exam administration, the best would probably be to focus on multiple choice, check, load, apply, and hotspot item types. And you won't be losing anything by preparing in that way. The drag and place items, the content in them will be the same content that you'll see in multiple choice, check, load, apply, and hotspot items starting on the 28th of April. Yeah, so remember the content's not changing. Part of the reason, we wanted to retire Dragon Place items, though, the main reason is that we believe those other items will do a better job in allowing you to showcase your qualifications. So it you will be probably gaining something by focusing on those item types. And yeah, so that's what I would do if anyone's in that type of situation. Um, and yeah, the idea with the Dragon Place retirement, I think, is to make your experience more seamless. And with those item types, we think your testing experience will be more smooth in addition to being more efficient.
Thank you. All right, another question, and I can actually answer this one. When will the new ARE guidelines be updated to reflect the changes to the resource guide mentioned? Will it list the contracts to study? So the good news is the updated guidelines are already available. So right now on our website, you'll find two different versions of the ARE guidelines. You'll find the one that is currently in effect that will be in effect until April 28th. And that's the one at the main ARE guidelines link. And then if you go back to the ARE update that we sent last week, that will have the link to the updated guidelines. You should also be able to find them on our website. And those will go into effect on April 28th. So you can preview the updated guidelines that does list all of the updated references that Terrence mentioned with the new contract documents. Actually, I should say they're not new. They're added to the reference list, but I think it's important to note that the exam objectives, the test specification hasn't changed. So we're just updating the reference guide to align with the content that's already on the exam. It's not new content that wasn't already being included on the exam. Hopefully that sets some of you at ease.
And I can add to that briefly, Jenny, that the AIA contract documents added to the reference guide before that you'll see that are added there, they're being used to test concepts that you would be tested on no matter what, right? Perhaps using different AIA contract documents. So your preparation can be, it will be improved with the knowing that those ones are on there, certainly, but your competencies, those are honed kind of outside of which particular AIA contract in many cases you might see in an item.
And Terrence, off the top of your head, do you know which 4 contracts were added to the reference guide?
Yes, so AIA A195 has been added. B140 or will be. B143 will be added as a recommended study resource. B195 and the G709.
All right, great. Thank you. Good memory. And I will note I think there was another question related to this, all the changes, including the reference guide things, the AIA Code of Ethics, as well as the provisional feedback and the removal of Dragon Place, everything goes into effect on April 28th. Nothing has changed now. So that's April 28th, 2025. All right. Our next question, Cassandra, I'll toss this one to you. So we've had some candidates, a couple questions in the Q&A about maybe some disconnect between NCARB policies as stated in the guidelines and what they hear from PSI at the test center. What can candidates do if they encounter that, and how does NCARB work with PSI on those issues?
That's a great question. I'm so sorry that's been an experience for any of our candidates, but we always recommend that if you have issues at the test center or online, that you immediately bring those issues to the proctor or the test center administrator's attention. You want that issue documented. And then if you run into any issues, you should always follow up with NCARB directly. Don't wait for PSI to do it for you. That's actually in the guidelines that you should contact customer relations to report any anomalies to your testing experience. And as for working with PSI, we have a very close relationship with that team, and we have some dedicated resources that we use behind the scenes to make sure that we are supporting our candidates as best as we can. We meet with them monthly to share feedback on survey results or just trend analysis from our candidates.
Okay, great. Another question for you, Cassandra. So can you walk us through the process to apply for exam accommodations in general? What does that look like? How should candidates
Sure.
start the process?
You should log into your My NCARB record. That's the first step. And then you would proceed to the examinations tab. And at the very bottom, you can select a button that says apply for accommodations. What we do recommend is before you apply that you have all of your PDF documents or your JPEGs available, because it will ask you to upload those documents at the time of application. So you upload your documents, you read through some assessments. There's always something to read at NCARB for our candidates. So you'll read through a few disclaimers and a few bits of information. Please have the best phone number to reach you, because in order to schedule certain accommodations, PSI will need contact information to reach out to you. Once you do that, we receive on our end, it alerts us that you've applied, and we begin the process of applying based on your documents, applying the accommodation to your record. We ask for about 5 to 7 business days to do that, because if there's anything in reference to your documents that we need clarification on, we'll perform some outreach to talk to our customers.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Terrence, a question for you about check all that apply. When you have a check all that apply question, does it generally tell you how many responses you should check? Like, will it say check 2 or check 3?
Yeah, always. The check all applied item will tell you check 2 or 3 or 4. One of those 3, and it'll do it. They're designed and formatted to tell you that each time. So yes.
Great, thank you. Cassandra, a question for you. Can candidates opt out of seeing the automated provisional feedback?
That is a question. Yes, no. You cannot opt out of seeing the provisional feedback. The move to kind of showing you the provisional feedback without selecting yes or no was truly based on the feedback we received directly from our customers in their candidate experience. We were receiving reports that people were missing it. They didn't seem to be able to locate it on the testing screen. So as a result, the provisional feedback starting April 28th will be very apparent to you. You won't be able to opt out of it. You can close your eyes and press exit, but I don't suggest doing that either.
All right. Now we've had a lot of comments about the digital whiteboard and scratch paper. We know candidates are always asking for scratch paper back, which I am sad to report to you is not going to happen. There is a blog on our website that explains in depth why scratch paper is not coming back to the exam. So you can Google it and it will pop up. I recommend giving it a read if you're wondering in depth the reasons why. But Terrence, on the flip side of that, does NCARB have any planned improvements to the digital whiteboard to make it a little more functional for candidates?
Yeah. So we are always working with the developer of the whiteboard to correct bugs and in the past, in the early years of the whiteboard, we were made some improvements since then. There are no plans for additional whiteboard improvements at this time, but we are certainly open to them should they be feasible and appropriate and make sense at that time.
Great, thank you. Okay. Next question. How some candidates have trouble reading the score reports with the scaled score and the fail and all the different percentages. Do either of you have any tips for candidates trying to make sense of their score report?
Well, yeah. So I guess I would uh, backtrack a bit and kind of look at I guess, remind ourselves of the reason for why the score reports are the way they are, at least the scaled scores. The scaled scores, they allow you to uh, com basically compare, where you might be in one division to another, or compare where you are in one division to maybe you take a retake exam in that division. Um, that's the point of the scaled scores, really just to facilitate how you gauge where you might be. You keep in mind the ARE has 6 divisions. These divisions, they have different numbers of items, different different cut scores. There's the ranges for the cut score for each division can differ and do often differ, and so there's a lot there that might stop a licensure candidate or a candidate from being able to gauge where they are, and so that's the point of the scaled score. The how in terms of reading the report, I would say keep that in mind. This is it's going to give you as good of an idea, I believe, and we believe, as if we put 75% on there, right? Or, slapped a percentage on your score, on, your exam scores. So, yeah, it's use it if you can. That's what I would say.
Great, thank you. Cassandra, an accommodations question for you. Are accommodations available only in the test center, or are some accommodations available when testing online?
Oh, yes. So there are some accommodations that are only available in the test center. So we talked about the translation dictionary. Of course, if you needed a reader, if you needed a separate room, if you needed something, a physical device for the safety and security of the exam, certain things that require some type of physical device would have to be in a test center where that device can be monitored. As for what's available for testing at home, extended test time, extended breaks would be at home. If you needed I guess like food or a beverage based on a medical condition, you could do that at home or at the test center. But so yes, there are some differences between the two, what's allowed.
Great, thank you. And it's a good time to mention that there's also a list in the ARE guidelines of pre-approved medical devices. So if you have something like an insulin pump or a pacemaker or a cast or a neck brace, those are pre-approved medical devices. You don't need an accommodation to have those. You can see a full list in the guidelines. Those 4 are just examples. Okay, next question. Cassandra, we talked a minute ago about candidates who just learned about accommodations and want to cancel an existing appointment so they can apply for accommodations. Is there a way for them to do that without being subject to the cancellation fee?
Technically, no. You have to pay the $100 cancellation fee, but you receive a seat credit in replacement, so you can reschedule at your leisure, of course, within a year. But unless there's something catastrophic that has happened, there is a fee for that cancellation. If you have run up against some type of life issue, we recommend contacting customer relations and we can support you. But again, that it really depends on what's going on.
Great, thank you. All right, Terrence, we have some more questions about the drag and drop retirement. Can you provide any more detailed information about the data and analysis or reasoning behind retiring the drag and place items?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned that we want to align with testing industry best practices. So kind of the way like it might work with a lot of creative endeavors or the work of groups of people at a workplace. We hear from the testing industry, hey, we're seeing X or Y. We're seeing that Perhaps drag and drop is another name for the drag and place item. Perhaps drag and drop or drag and place isn't testing as efficiently as other item types. So, we are engaged in those conversations with other professional licensure examination bodies and credentialing examination bodies in general, really. We're engaged in those conversations. We're following them. And so, in something like the case of this Dragon Place item retirement, we came back to the office and used what we've been hearing, and we looked at our own data. We have metrics that look at item efficiency. Is are we getting assessment value from a particular item or a particular item type? Is that value guiding us to making the right decisions about pass fail? Are you qualified, or do you need some more seasoning? That type of thing. So we looked at our data and we found that, well, what we've been hearing was borne out. Multiple choice, very efficient as an assessment tool. And same thing with those other two item types. And the drag and place items were just not quite as efficient, and it became a kind of an easy call for us. If we know of a way to improve how you get your qualifications get assessed, we're gonna start making moves to implement that. And so that's a little bit of the background on how we came to retire, or the decision to retire drag and place items.
Great. And a follow-up question. Should candidates expect to see the removal of drag and place items have any impact on overall pass rates for the exam?
Yeah, so I do not have that information. We look at how item types perform, I guess, and how items perform. Do a lot of people get them right, or a lot of people get them wrong, generally. And so in the case of the drag and place items, we limited our focus to the efficiency of them. And if it's a less efficient item than others, then perhaps it using those other item types will provide you with more opportunities to show what you've learned, the knowledge, skills, and abilities you've acquired.
Great. Thank you. All right, Cassandra, a question for you. I know when we launched the ESL accommodation, we saw New York wasn't accepting divisions taken with the ESL accommodation. Is that still the case? Are there any jurisdictions that don't accept exam divisions that are passed with an ESL accommodation?
Excellent question. New York was the last board that took some time to accept the ESL accommodation. And I'm happy to report there are no boards that do not accept it. So all boards take your ESL accommodation scores. And I do want to share that boards do not know that you have received any type of accommodation. It's not documented in a way where that is part of your record, and it's not used as an assessment when it's time to grant licensure.
But it won't impact your licensure application at all.
At all.
Great. All right. Next question. A few people have asked in the Q&A about the text size of the exam when they're testing. Is there any option to increase text size when taking the exam?
So that would be considered an accommodation. They probably wouldn't be able to perform a text size in the exam itself, but they could provide a tool where they can increase the size of the exam, or the text size, I should say. As for ongoing making it larger without an accommodation, I'm not aware of that. Terrence, maybe you would know.
Well, I can tell you that for case study questions, the resources can be magnified so that you're seeing the text at a in a larger font size. But for what we call a standalone item, a non-case study item, kind of like your traditional item, Yes, we do not have the a tool that will magnify that text specifically, at least at the moment.
Okay, thank you. A question we've seen pop up a few times. Is the competency standard going to replace the exam? Are we expecting to see an ARE 6.0 anytime soon? Just general question around the next exam. Terrence, I'll toss that one to you.
It will inform what the next exam looks like. Absolutely. That's kind of the one of the purposes of creating the competency standard is for that very reason. The examinations for whatever the profession might be undergo cycles of taking a deep look at what practitioners actually need out there in the world. And after taking that deep look, which we did recently with our analysis of a practice survey, and what we're doing with with volunteer architects in our committee kind of ecosystem here at NCARB, we're in the stages of we're in that cycle of where we're looking at what do practitioners really need to use out there to be competent. And so, yes, to summarize or to recap, that competency standard will inform what's being tested on whatever the new version of the ARE might be, or whatever assessment there might be in the future.
Yeah, and I think NCARB has already announced that we're working on those changes. As Terrence said, we're going to align the current ARE with the competency standard. We're expecting to launch that update in mid 2026, probably sometime in the late springish, maybe. You can expect more from NCARB on that in the months ahead. But as we've said on the website and in previous emails, we're not expecting to see any changes to the exam divisional structure with that update. So you're going to see the same 6 exam divisions. You're going to see, I think, primarily mostly the same content, some adjustments here and there, but nothing that should impact your overall licensure path or progress or strategy. So we'll provide more information on that in the months ahead. But for now, candidates can hopefully rest easy knowing that we're not going to get 16 exams sprung on you based on the 16 competencies anytime soon. Nothing like that. All right, next question for Cassandra. How long should candidates expect the ESL accommodation application process to take?
Generally, it takes about 5 to 7 business days. It may be shorter or longer depending on the documentation that we've received. If we have additional questions, we ask that customers give us time to review that outreach. Then, of course, if they have to test in a test center, it takes about 48 hours for PSI to call and actually schedule that time in your test center of choice.
And Cassandra, another question for you. Where can candidates find more information about taking the exam through online proctoring, like the rules and requirements?
The best place to go is the ARE 5.0 guidelines, and that will give you all of the information you need to ensure that you are aligned with the online proctored guidelines. We also have a website that's available for candidates who are looking to test online. It is, I believe, ncarb.psi. I'm about to say it wrong, but there is a website where candidates can actually check out system requirements for online proctoring, rules about anything to do with the exam, like the candidate agreement, as well as if the test center is going to be closed due to inclement weather, you can find it on this website as well. And maybe we can drop it in the chat for our customers.
And I'll add, Cassandra, I'll take this moment to plug the ARE test run. So if you're taking an online proctored exam, we have a sample exam with 10 questions to get you used to how the exam will appear and function as you're taking it at home. through via online proctoring. And you'll also get to like test out what it's actually like to log in using PSI software and to you know interact with a proctor. So if anyone has any concerns or about making sure that they're as prepared as possible for taking an online proctored exam, I'd highly recommend that you access the test run, which is available through your NCARB record. I believe the link is somewhere very close to the practice exams link on the page you'll see there.
And one of my colleagues has helpfully slacked me the link that Cassandra was trying to remember off the top of her head. So it is www.psiexams.com/NCARB. And I think there's a couple Q&As that have it in there if you don't want to try to remember that. And it's linked in our guidelines and on our website as well. So you can definitely find it. It's findable. All right, I think we're getting pretty close to our time here, so we'll go ahead and start our wrap up. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And I hope that we answered most of your questions. I know there's always some that we don't get to. So remember, if we didn't answer your question yet, you can always contact us. You can go to www.ncarb.org/contact and get in touch about your questions or post them on our online exam community where lots of candidates and our staff are there to answer your questions. For now, I will ask Terrence and Cassandra to each share a key takeaway from today's webinar. So Terrence, what's one thing that you want candidates to take away from our webinar today?
So what I would say is if when you're thinking about the updates we made to the ARE a bit later, think about this, that the changes we've made are intended to make your experience smoother. They're intended to streamline your assessment experience. We don't want you to have to worry about, oh, well, it's, what do I need to do? How do I interact with this item type, right? Or that item type? Or how do I interact with, this tool? What we want to do to help you showcase or demonstrate your competence is to make that stuff as seamless as possible so you don't have to think about it. And so that is the purpose behind these changes, to get you to a spot where you can just show what you know and worry about all the rest as little as possible.
Thank you. And Cassandra?
For my key takeaway from this webinar is to really pay attention when you are applying for accommodations and understand that we must be able to place them on your record before you schedule. You'll run into issues if you schedule an exam and then apply, and we don't want that for you. As Terrence said, these processes are in place to make your journey as smooth as possible. I also want to remind people, if they run into any issues with anything along the journey, you have a dedicated support team and customer relations that's here to help you. So you can give us a call at 202-879-0520 or www.ncarb.org/contact. And we're there behind the scenes supporting you along the way.
All right. Thank you to Cassandra and Terrence for being our experts today. And thank you all to you, our viewers, for joining us for this webinar. We hope we were able to answer your questions and put you at ease about your next exam appointment. But if you couldn't see the entire webinar, you can view it later on our YouTube channel. It will be available probably in the next day or so. And if you want to stay in the loop on updates to our programs or the latest resources, you can follow us on most social media channels at NCARB, or you can find us online at www.ncarb.org. Thank you all and have a great rest of your afternoon.